Now we'll move on to our 1:30 item, and this is Agenda Item 6A, discussion and possible action regarding implementation of Measure V, declaring intentionally killed and left standing trees a public nuisance. Supervisor Haschek, you are the sponsor. Please introduce the item, sir.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Most everyone in this room probably knows the history of Measure V, and it's been gone back and forth. The latest was the letter that County Council sent to MRC, stating that the county believed that we have the ability to enforce it, and which provided the legal justification for the county's defense. And so I thought that we should just have a discussion on, one of the questions being of how do we enforce Measure V and how that would look. And so one item that got brought up at a previous board meeting was to send it to the General Government Standing Committee and have them really look at it and explore what the different options would be. And so I think because the people voted for this ordinance, and we should honor it enough by figuring out how we would implement it and enforce it. So that's where we are with it.
Okay, sir, and any other information or to be shared, anyone else? Or do we go to public comment? Supervisor Jurdy?
I'll just ask county staff, county council or CEO, if they have received a letter back from MRC in response to the county's letter.
I'll go first. Speaking from the executive office, to my knowledge, I have not received a letter back, and I'll refer it over to county council.
And our office has not received a response either. I will say that when the letter went out, I did reach out to MRC's attorney, Steve Johnson, just to let him know that per the board's direction, the letter contained an invitation for discussion as to alternative practices to I believe the term was frilling that was used in his letter. However, at that time, he indicated that a number of MRC's staff were out on the holidays, and they may not be getting back to us soon.
Any other questions, supervisors? Statements? Seeing none? Oh, Supervisor Haschek?
And I would just like to add that I did have a conversation with some of the people at MRC, and that I think that whichever way we go in dealing with this issue, I would like to see a task force or something developed where we can look at the issue of these tan oaks and what to do with them and how to make an economically viable program out of it. And so it's a kind of a win-win where we can create jobs and deal with these dead standing trees at the same time. So I would like to see that move forward. I don't know if it's a board directive or anything, but I'm willing to work on that too.
Supervisor McCowan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, whichever method the company currently uses to control tan oak costs them money. So if there were a way to gain economic value from the tan oak, I'm pretty sure they would be very open to that. So the fact that's not happening now may indicate the numerous different conditions that need to come together to make it a profitable operation aren't currently there. I know that they and others have looked at making tan oak economically viable. I'm not aware of anyone doing it on a large enough scale that would accomplish their objective in reducing the percentage of tan oak.
I think there's been a lot of research and a lot of test products to date, but times change. So maybe your suggestion is a good one. Supervisor McCowan?
Just one more, since you brought this item forward, do you have an opinion on what the county should do in terms of enforcement? Should we be taking an active role, and what would that look like?
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As far as the first point, I have had numerous people in the 3rd District and outside come to me saying, hey, we've got this solution for, Tan Oak, and we think it's a viable option. And so I think that getting these parties together and just kind of looking at what maybe new technology or whatever is a good idea, and that would be a good thing for, the environment, and maybe create new businesses from it. My recommendation here is to send this to the standing committee, the General Government Standing Committee, to really have the time to look at what the enforcement options are, and have an in-depth discussion about how to deal with it. So I'm willing to put that forward, and I put that forward in my rationale.
Okay, we're going to go to public comment. For each speaker, you each have 3 minutes to speak. We'd like to begin with Lee McClellan. Lee? Please come forward to the podium, state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Lee McClellan, and I am here standing with everyone else here because I feel and experience a sadness when a corporate business is not fulfilling, when they're breaking the law. A law has been made, and the people agree upon this, and it saddens me that they're not being put into, held up to what they're supposed to be doing. And I would like for a change to happen here. Thank you.
Thank you. And clerk, we need to time him. Terry DeSulke, and Terry will be followed by Naomi Wagner.
Good afternoon. My name is Terry DeSulke. I should let you know that I have filed a complaint, and I will give you copies of that as soon as I'm finished. So I live out in what we call Turtle Creek. I have land that's adjacent to MRC. I also overlook some MRC land. I live across the big river from Mendocino Redwood Company land, where I can still and have today seen dead standing trees since 2018, greater than 5 meters in height. In late 2018, I got a grant that cleared for fire suppression from USDA. After this clearing was done on my land, I could see large swaths of dead standing trees across the river and canyon from my home. I couldn't see them before, now I can. Great view, thank you, MRC. I ask you, why do I, as a landowner, do the right thing by clearing the understory to suppress fire in my community when the danger from dead standing trees negates everything I have done and puts me and my community in danger? Why is this allowed to happen when we voted that it would no longer be allowed? I did receive a confirmation number this morning via email, because Friday when I was trying to file my complaint, nobody knew where I needed to file it. So I finally got a confirmation number, and it says, "Hi Terry, I've logged your complaint in, and the number is 1C 2019-0587. When I spoke to you at the counter last week, I explained that while an important matter, code enforcement has no regulations, ordinances as of yet to enforce owner businesses to remove dead trees." So that's where we stand, and I'd like to give you a copy of my complaint, and I'd like to see this law that the people voted on enforced. It's called democracy. Thank you.
Naomi?
Naomi Wagner, west of Willits. I have a video that I've requested to show, and I'd like permission to do that as part of my public expression. And it is 5 minutes long. I believe there are people who are willing to give up their time to show it.
No. It's just not the practice that we have. If you'd submitted it to the clerk, we maybe could have watched it as, doing our studying that we usually do. But no, we won't allow that today.
Well, Carrie, I did communicate
I'm
with
sorry,
you.
Naomi, you're using your time. Please go forward.
Okay, we will be able to show it in the hall. It's very unfortunate that we're being denied this means of public expression. I do think that I went through all the steps that were necessary to help that happen. I did not send it to you because I didn't know how to submit it. I thought we would submit it today, and it's just a matter of a link. We will submit the video, and we'll certainly be showing it widely because and I'll tell you what it's called. Mendocino County is burning, and basically what you're going to see is what it really looks like out there. You see the forest fires that we've been enduring over the last 5 years, and you see the tiny, tiny belts of conifers that are left and the huge roads, and you see the dead standing trees, just unbelievable swaths of them. And you need to be able to see this to actually appreciate the extent of what is being done to this county. It's not only Mendocino Redwood Company, but it's mainly them. And by their own statistics, they show that they've now poisoned trees over about 110,000 acres of their 220,000 acre holdings. It is drastic. It is an emergency. We need to address this, and I hope that you will take it seriously and more seriously than you already have, because it really is up to you now. The county council has given you his opinion. The state is not going to intervene, so I'm wishing you the courage to do the right thing. Thank you.
Beth Bosk, and Beth will be followed by Margaret Coster.
Beth Bosk, Albion. Takes me an hour and a half to drive here to speak for 3 minutes. Usually I watch the board meetings on the internet. You are depriving everybody on the coast who would have to drive for an hour and a half to 2 hours to get here from seeing the evidence that Naomi Wagner wanted to present to you and to the county as a whole. I support John Hassick's motion to send the question of how to enforce Measure V to the Standing Government Committee. The measure needs to be enforced. If the question is, are dead trees more combustible than live ones? The answer is yes.
Thank you, Margaret. And Margaret will be followed by Madge Strong.
Good afternoon. My name is Margaret Coster, and as some of you may know, I've been involved and am involved with Move to Amend, which is an effort to amend the United States Constitution to say that a corporation is not a person with constitutional rights, and that spending money on political communication is not itself political speech. So I want to thank Supervisor Hasjack for bringing this forward, and although I would characterize the board's action on this matter as somewhat timid, it is action, and that is more than we have seen on other topics, so I thank you for proceeding. Mendocino Redwood Company is a corporation, and corporation is a privilege. It is granted by the government through the corporate charter, and the government is supposed to be, in our system, answerable to the people. So the people of Mendocino County have told you that we do not want dead standing trees, that we want some other way for Mendocino Redwood Company to conduct itself. Mendocino Redwood Company does not have inherent rights. They have privileges. Privileges for the conduct of business, and those privileges are granted to them through the legislative process. So they don't have an absolute right to make money, and they don't have a right to do whatever they want. And the people should have something to say about what they do because we are the ones that have given them the privilege to be a money-making corporation. Thank you.
Madge Strong, and Madge will be followed by Rosamond Crowder.
Thank you, Chair Brown and members of the Board of Supervisors. It's been 3.5 years since Measure V passed overwhelmingly by the voters, and it also became law that same year, 2016. And it's really been a long wait for anything to actually be enforced. So I am very glad that you are finally moving forward. I appreciated the County Council's opinion that this is something that not only has been made law, but that it makes sense, that it is enforceable. Enforcing it is part of the economic environment. So when Congress passes mileage requirements for cars, car manufacturers have to factor that into how they build their cars. Maybe it costs them more, maybe it doesn't. Maybe they retool and it works even better. Maybe MRC can retool and figure out some better ways to do business that are legal and that comply with the law that was passed by the voters of Mendocino County. That is their responsibility. It is your responsibility to hold them to that by enforcing the law. I hope that the penalties that go with violating the law are enough to motivate them to do the right thing. But that is your job to enforce the law, their job to figure out how to do it, and I'm quite sure that they will be able to figure it out. I just think you need to get on with enforcing it. It's also, as has been pointed out, really scary to live in a county that is this fire prone, that is this, at risk. And so getting 110,000 acres of areas that are filled with dead trees that are combustible. Not only that, they're also full of all sorts of herbicides that go into the smoke, and the firefighters have to inhale it when they fight the fires. These are all things that are part of why Measure V makes sense. So I really am thankful that you will today send this to the committee and that they will come up with a very solid and motivating enforcement mechanism. Thank you very much.
Rosamond? And she will be followed by Bill Heil.
Rosamond Crowder. I live outside of Willits, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I wanted to thank County Council for the excellent, excellent letter recently written regarding the legality of Measure V. And I've heard that there are 3 possible ways that the code could be enforced. One is through code enforcement, one is through the sheriff, and one is through the ag department. And it's not just agricultural, timber is agricultural, that are leaving standing dead trees. I'm also aware that PG&E and even CAL FIRE leave standing dead trees. And I think the sheriff has plenty of more emergency things to take care of. So I really think, personally, I think code enforcement is the way to go. I was kind of disturbed to hear the earlier speaker talk about her attempt to give notification to code enforcement and have them not be able to identify that this was an ordinance violation. And so maybe that could be looked into, how to streamline that. I think it's a little odd that all these years that this has been an ordinance, that there haven't been more people sending in notifications to code enforcement. And, I think it's important that the public still is involved and not just pass it off to the sheriffs, who's busy, having to prioritize their list of things to look into. And so I've heard that that people are really concerned about being the one to hand in a code enforcement violation because they feel like they could be targeted. I know this has happened in other cases where people have put in a violation, and code enforcement gives the person who is doing the violation the name of the person that turned them in. And, you know, this sort of thing it's just, neighbors don't like to turn in neighbors. So that could be looked into. And also, I'm also somewhat concerned, I mean, maybe I'm just imagining things, but I would not want all these dead standing trees to be in something like turned into pellets. I'm really concerned about the pellet plant that's currently operating, and I heard this morning that the violations were directly tied to the volume of pellets that were being made. And also, if these trees are poisoned, the pellets would then have the poison in them. So I just wanted to alert you to that if you're looking for ways to deal with tan oak. So I really think code enforcement is the method, and I hope you will support code enforcement in doing that. Thank you.
Bill? And after Bill will be John Anderson.
Thank you. Bill Heil. First of all, I want to thank the board and the government, our county government, for actually taking the ordinance we passed 3.5 years ago seriously. I know it's a big issue. I know that Mendocino Redwood Company is a huge economic force in our county, and it's hard to buck them when they control so much of our natural resources. So thank you. I also know that there are timber companies that are abiding by the rules, and I think both Conservation Fund and the Redwood Forest Council, they have bought and are managing the same cutover timberland that MRC bought, same kind of thing, without herbicides. Some of them would like to maybe use a little bit, but they're honoring the rules. And I think that it's incumbent on the Board of Supervisors to honor them as well as be afraid yet take on Mendocino Redwood Company. Thank you.
John Anderson?
Hi, Board. John Anderson with MRC. Just wanted to state that we do stand by our 2016 letter to the county. However, we are open to working with the county, working on a working group. We understand other people have tried things with tan oak as well. We're not pretending to have the answer, so if there is a solution, then we are all ears on that. We have a bit of a concern if we move towards enforcement, that kind of leads maybe down a road towards litigation and will keep us from being openly involved in any working group if we get legal advice that tells us not to do that. So we'd like to avoid that. But there are some good ideas that are out there on other forest and restoration projects that have material that is subcommercial. RCRC is working on a project in the Sierras. So bringing together all these ideas to come up with a possible solution, I think, would be a better route to go. But we would be happy to participate in that.
Okay, don't leave.
Okay.
Supervisor Williams?
Excuse me.
Hey, John.
Hi.
Do you have any constructive ideas about how we can make this problem go away? There are a whole lot of people who are not happy with the practice. I understand it'll cost MRC and derail the restoration of the ratio of species to stop the practice altogether. And we're just at this standstill.
Yeah.
And I like the working group idea. I don't want to see litigation if we can avoid it. But can you help drive us in a direction where we can make peace and put this behind us?
Well, I think this working group would be a good way to go about that. Let's bring everybody's ideas together here. We've tried making flooring out of this. We've tried using herbicide alternatives. We've been working on this for 20 plus years. We think this is an effective method right now because the trees that we've treated 20 years ago, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago are now on the ground. So we don't have 110,000 acres of dead standing trees. We've got much, much less than that. So
how many
I
acres?
think just having an educational component of this too.
How many acres would you say?
Oh, right now
today?
they are
Yeah.
standing?
Yeah.
Oh, it's hard. You know, it takes about 5 years for a tree to fall over. So, you know, there might be, it's hard for me to say, just because of variability between stands and which ones are in wind-prone areas, and so there's a lot of variables there.
I appreciate it. I hope this working group can do it in front of the public eye. I know I and others have been accused of having private meetings. And so while sometimes taking this cameras out of the picture allows discussions that otherwise wouldn't happen, I don't think the public will appreciate it. So if there's a way for us to do this, have this working group meet and talk about, I see people agreeing in the room, about how to move forward collaboratively, I'd like to be part of that.
Great.
Supervisor McCallum?
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the current rate of application, how many years would you, if things continued as they are, how many years do you think it would take to treat those areas that you've identified for treatment?
I don't have I can get that exact number for you, but, you know, we're probably looking at, you know, 10 years, maybe 20 years. Again, it's not, like you suggest, it's not every single acre that we own. We have some areas that have their natural level of conifers now, and so there's not a need to manage the tan oak in those areas. So it's just those areas have been mismanaged in the past, have that imbalance that the forest practice rules require us to keep in check and reduce whenever any management occurs in the forest.
So as part of the working group, in addition to looking at alternatives, would you also be open to what modifications can you make to your current practice in terms of in what proximity to residences, whether it's, you know, an isolated one or a community? My understanding a few years ago, Anderson Valley, Nash Mill Road, you would stay, I think, a couple of ridges away, potentially. Anyway, there's some things you could do that would help address some of the current concerns of neighbors who don't want the practice immediately adjacent to them.
Absolutely, and that's what we've done with a number of owners, is looking at green belts. Sometimes we have to retain intact forest whenever we're thinning out some of these places, so let's put those close to property lines. We can try using chainsaws instead of having dead standing trees. We've seen that to be problematic in the past because of how the vigorous nature of the resprouting of the tan oak. And so we have worked with various landowners right adjacent to us to address their concerns. And that includes just using this treatment in sporadic areas throughout the watershed, letting those green up, and then, you know, let's go look at other areas that we need to treat to restore these forests back to their conifer dominance.
And likewise, I've heard different things on access to firewood cutters. Years past, I know you were very, my belief is you were very accommodating. I heard recently maybe not quite so much so, because that's another method of reducing, at least in site-specific areas, or to allow adjacent property owners to do vegetation clearance. Are those things that you currently allow with, you know, appropriate agreements, or?
We do have permits for people that would like to come on the property to do various things, anything from something like that to recreational activities. Yeah, we do have a permit process for that. And we have updated our vegetation management plan, and that involves tan oak treatment as well. That's on our website. That talks about further reductions in the amount of hardwood that we treat, and also goes into details of how, because we are FSC certified, that we cannot convert true oak forests or even tan oak forests that are natural into conifer. So there's all aspects of this vegetation management plan that talks about areas we just don't manage the tan oak because it's natural, and it goes into the details of how much tan oak we do treat when we do go into a stand.
This is outrageous. Just obey the law. The movie will be shown outside.
This is not about that. We came to talk.
Beth, please, or leave the room.
What are you doing, Carrie?
Cease.
You posted a particular ordinance.
I'm going to call a recess and have the room cleared if you don't be quiet.
Any further questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I would like to ask Mr. Schultz, our Planning and Building Director, Services Director, code enforcement complaints, are they kept confidential?
Yes, we currently, Brent Schultz, Planning and Building Services Director, we do keep them confidential. We speak to county council from time to time about them, but we do, and we keep a record, we log all of them that come in. And then we have a process to work those through and try to resolve them.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that the public understands that those names are kept confidential.
Madam Chair, may I clarify just a little
Yes.
bit? So there have been a few situations, so there is an evidence code section that specifically protects the confidentiality of a party reporting information for enforcement purposes. We have worked with code enforcement. They have historically kept that information confidential. I believe there may have been a couple of exceptions in which the reporting party self-disclosed the fact that they were the reporting party. That is, outside of the code enforcement proceeding, they were making that information public, in which case I don't think we have a basis to withhold that anymore. But by and large, if the reporting party wants the information kept confidential, their identity is kept confidential.
Okay, thank you, council. Which of you are first? And we're going over time with this item.
Mine's for Brent. I have a question for the planning director. In regards to code enforcement, I understand a complaint has been filed. What are the next steps, and is there anything this board could do to prioritize so that we can get to the bottom of it? Has there been a code violation? I would expect code enforcement to, I don't know, document it, take a report, some photos, bring it back.
Madam Chair, if I could address the board, Brett Schultz again. I did see there was a complaint. It's been logged. I haven't had a chance to talk to our our code enforcement staff about that yet. So we take them through a normal process of analyzing them. Are they in compliance or not with our codes? And then we take whatever necessary action.
And what action would that be in this case if the complaint is found to hold merit?
Well, it really depends on, what they've done, and I can't really speak to it yet because I haven't been briefed by our code enforcement manager. I did see one come in, but I don't know quite yet what it is. But we take all the complaints very seriously and we try to get through them. But as you know, we have limited staff. We only have 5 code enforcement staff, and we get about 600 complaints a year, all kinds of complaints. So.
Supervisor McCowan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we've heard a couple of alternatives. Refer to general government, which of course would be Brown acted, public, once a month, additional burden on staff resources to to participate. We've also heard a working group thrown out there, and I kind of like that idea that we might have 2 supervisors who would be an ad hoc working group. We would appoint only those 2, but they could meet with any relevant stakeholders, including industry and neighbors. And I guess to move it along and see if that idea has any traction, I would move that we appoint Supervisors Haschek and Williams to an ad hoc committee to work with interested stakeholders to review alternatives to the current method and as well as mitigations.
Supervisor McCowan, could you clarify mitigations? I'm not clear what we would bring back.
That would be the types of things such as allowing neighbors to do vegetation clearance, firewood cutters, or to keep a specified distance away from neighbors, or anything else the ad hoc comes up with that seems viable.
So one of the concerns I have is this...
Hang on,
yeah.
because we have a motion on the floor, we don't have a second. You asked for clarification, so the motion dies for lack of a second. Supervisor Haschek?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. If we're into making motions right now, I wasn't clear if we were done with public comments. But.
Well, I received 2 speaker cards very late, and they don't even say what the topic is, but we were already into discussion, so.
Okay. Okay, so I would make a motion then to restate Supervisor McCowan's motion, plus add that we do send it to the General Government Committee to look at the enforcement mechanisms.
So we have a motion,
I would second that.
and we have a second. Supervisor Jurdy?
So I just want to point out that if it's sent to a standing committee, then those two supervisors cannot discuss this issue outside of those standing committee meetings, and that very much limits any creative discussions, any discussions with members of the public outside of those meetings by the two supervisors as a group. So I think there's flexibility that's needed in this issue, and I'm curious that there was no second to Supervisor McCowan's motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
I'd like to withdraw the second.
The motion dies for lack of a second now. So the chair would like to entertain a motion. I'm not seeing one come forward. Supervisor Williams?
I move we direct code enforcement to investigate and document the first complaint and return to this board within 30 days.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion?
I think I'm concerned we're reverting to grandstanding here and not actually doing anything. Supervisor McCowan offered very generously to create an ad hoc committee of the two supervisors who are putting this issue above many other county issues. I don't understand why we're not proceeding along those lines.
Okay, can I stop for just a moment?
Absolutely.
We are running up against a timed item, but Raquel, Maria, I'm not sure what you wanted to speak on. Are you Raquel? Where's Maria? Okay. Measure V. So it is on Measure V? Yes. Okay. It's kind of hard to know what to do. Get up very quickly and state whatever your comment is.
Okay, sorry, I've never done this before. This is my first time.
Welcome.
So I hear you guys talking, and I hear you guys talking to the MRC rep, and all I really hear you guys saying is that you're going to try and work with MRC and not really work with the people who have voted in Measure V for 3.5 years, and I don't see why nothing is being done about this. You are literally saying, how long is it going to take you to finish committing these crimes? 10 years, 20 years to finish committing your crimes? Or let's just commit your crimes a little bit further away from other people's lands. That's not what we want. We want you to stop it. We want you to say, hey, you're a company, we don't care, you're committing crimes. Stop these crimes, because it's illegal. If I commit a crime, I go to jail. They commit a crime, they just get money for it.
Maria?
My name is Mariah Gillarden. I'm partly in the zone that's affected if this goes up in flames, but I mainly came here to observe the process, and I feel, and to support the community that is fighting for their right to be heard. And I would like to donate my remaining 2 minutes to Beth as one of the people who worked so hard on it and has come so far to speak. And I ask you to please let me give her 2 minutes.
I'm sorry. We need to move forward. We have a timed item and we're past that, just as we gave you a time, specific time. So either conclude or go forward.
Well, then I conclude that as an observer, I don't find this a very democratic process, and it seems bizarre that this happens in such a small county where we know each other. And this is kind of weather-worn. I was hoping to retire it, but I think we're back to defending that we once voted, and we're not sure if it's being enforced. And that's really sad and disappointing.
Okay, back to Board of Supervisors. Supervisors? Supervisor McCowan, I'm sorry.
Well, we do have a motion on the floor. The motion doesn't seem to get us any closer to a solution. So, you know, directing
hang on.
investigation of one complaint, and despite the county letter, which was a very well-written letter responding to the legal points raised by MRC in their letter of 2016, MRC stands by their letter. So point counterpoint, only a court could decide, and it would seem like having the working group with all parties, and the speakers misinformed, all relevant parties, that includes industry, it includes affected landowners, it includes interested community members. The ad hoc would be able to meet with all of them to consider alternatives and mitigations. That would seem to move the ball a lot further down the road than giving direction to look at one complaint, which probably at that point puts the company out of the discussion.
So clerk, please read the motion. Who made the motion and who seconded?
We have a motion on the floor from Supervisor Williams, seconded by Supervisor Hashchak, which reads, direct code enforcement to investigate a document first complaint and return to the board within 30 days for reporting.
Supervisor Williams, you...
Yeah, I would be willing to amend the motion to include creating the proposed ad hoc, and I'd be happy to serve on it. What I don't want to do is create that ad hoc and not have any information to work with. I don't know. We've heard that there's a violation. Without some documentation on whether there is and what it looks like, it's very hard to move forward. I don't want the ad hoc to be given a task that's, you know, go keep busy and come back in a while. It needs to be, the scope needs to be reduced. And that's, so if you would support this motion with the inclusion of forming the ad hoc, I'd be happy to amend.
Supervisor McCowan?
The motion not stating the direction to investigate the complaint would not preclude the ad hoc from doing so in meeting with staff on that topic. And I'd maybe seek confirmation from County Council.
My apologies, Madam Chair. I'm losing track a little bit as to where we are on the proposals.
If we were to appoint an ad hoc to meet with relevant stakeholders, including industry, adjacent landowners, community members, and staff, would anything preclude that ad hoc from meeting with staff on the issue of the complaint that has been filed?
I don't know that it would in terms of the process. However, you may want, rather than for the ad hoc to meet with staff while the investigation is ongoing, if there are particular things that they're looking at, you might want to give them the opportunity to complete that and to come back, rather than having essentially a policy discussion in the middle of a factual investigation.
So the two are oil and water, basically.
Not completely, but I would suggest that it would be beneficial to separate them.
What does this have to do with enforcement of Measure B?
Beth, please leave the room. Okay, Lindsay.
Hi. For clarification, with Supervisor Williams with a motion on the floor and Supervisor Hashchak seconding, I would appreciate clarification from Supervisor Williams as to language and the motion text.
Do you have it at all for me to correct?
I have, all I have is direct code enforcement to investigate a document first complaint and return to the board within 30 days and creation of an ad hoc.
That's the motion, that's correct.
Okay.
Okay.
And does the seconder concur with the amendment?
Yes.
Thank you.
Supervisor Drury.
I'm curious why every time this issue comes on the agenda, the two new supervisors are determined to be in the minority on this board. It seems no matter how generous the rest of the board is in accommodating the wishes of the two new supervisors are looking for an opportunity to be outvoted. I mean, we had the same motion that Supervisor Hashak brought forward today, to send this to general government failed on a 2-3 vote because Supervisor Williams refused to support it. Now it seems that Supervisor Williams is looking for an opportunity to be in the minority yet again.
Okay, we do have a motion on the floor.
Before voting, may I please know who is on the ad hoc?
I believe it was Supervisor Williams and Supervisor Haschak
That was not stated.
That's not in the motion.
that
Can
said
we-
they would serve.
Can we amend the motion to clarify Supervisor Williams and Haschak will serve on the new ad hoc? And to respond to Supervisor Jurdy, I would prefer being in the majority. I would like you to come along. All we're asking is that code enforcement follow up on the complaint. What we don't want to see is a long backlog, hold this complaint in a queue for a year or longer. The ad hoc won't have anything to work on if that's the case. And so the two together are the perfect marriage here. We get the data to work with and we get the ad hoc assigned to work on it.
Supervisor Jurdy.
I'm glad to hear that the ad hoc will be formed because that was not part of the motion just a minute ago.
Gentlemen, let's
vote.
Okay, so the motion again, please read it.
One final time, a motion with amendment from Supervisor Williams, seconded by Supervisor Haschak, reads, direct code enforcement to investigate a document first complaint and return to the board within 30 days and create an ad hoc of Supervisor Williams and Haschak.
Okay.
The motion carries with Supervisor McCowan dissenting.
All righty. Yes, Ms.
Chair Brown,
Angela.
thank you. Just one comment that this motion is stated for 30 days. January 7th, this board should adopt the calendar, so then we would know when this item would actually come back.
Right.
Thank you.
Because we don't have a calendar for the new year, correct?
That's correct.
So we're moving on to our 2 o'clock timed item. And this is agenda item number 5B. It's a notice public hearing